Yes, guys, hello, and welcome back to another Spurs-related video, keeping that daily video content for you guys. Today, we have a very interesting talking point revolving our chairman and the positives and negatives to do with his business with Tottenham Hotspur. If you guys like this idea and you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you are new, and turn post notifications on for our videos. But I've got Jack alongside me. Jack, what are we talking about today in a bit more depth?
So we're just kind of assessing the situation currently at Tottenham Hotspur and the job that Daniel Levy has done. Obviously, he's come under scrutiny by a lot of Tottenham Hotspur fans. Some would say rightly so, some would say unfairly. And that's why I think it's our job, James, to kind of depict the situation and look at the positives and negatives where maybe we could have invested in the past that could have pushed us on, but also look at how he's run us sustainably as a football club. And this video kind of come in recent news today that Everton and Nottingham Forest have come under scrutiny by the Premier League for kind of breaching sustainability rules and profitability and kind of investing more than they've made. And that's why we thought this would be a cracking talking point, and we thought we'd bring it to you guys.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's very interesting. Obviously, Everton, like you said, Everton and Nottingham Forest likely to get points deductions in the coming weeks. And, we can consider ourselves, I guess, lucky that we're not involved in that. Newcastle also in a bit of hot water. So, yeah, we thought we'd assess sort of how the club's been run over the last few years. If you guys want to comment any of your thoughts on these talking points made, please do so. And obviously, happy to have a discussion in the comments as well. But Jack, we want to talk about transfers first in terms of transfers in the last few years that, I mean, a lot of which didn't happen. If we're talking back to 2017, 2018 sort of area where the Jack Grealish sort of saga happened, where we offered, I believe it was originally 3 million and Josh Onoma. And then we went on to offering a higher bid. And then I think it ended up as a £25 million bid, which was then rejected. And Jack Grealish admits disappointment over the failed transfer to Tottenham. This is one of numerous examples of where transfers didn't come up off for us in, I'd say, between 2017 and sort of 2020. Would you agree?
Yeah, so obviously this is a while ago now, but we feel like it's important to look at over kind of the past decade and see where Tottenham had the opportunity to potentially invest and kind of push for a Premier League title, push for like even higher up in the Champions League. We know we made the final, and I think you'll see it was kind of the year after that we did. But this Jack Grealish one was kind of a really significant one at the time, where Spurs didn't invest for a whole year. If you remember, in the January and the summer transfer window, we didn't make one signing. The only players that actually come back in was Oliver Skipp coming into the first team, Josh Onoma returning back from a loan. And that Jack Grealish was that one signing where we felt like he could add to a bit of squad depth and star quality. And obviously we know Jack Grealish ended up being £100 million player at Manchester City. So there's numerous examples where potentially we could have invested in players that would have helped really push this Spurs on, especially from a depth perspective. But there's reasons maybe why we didn't make these signings, and that's why we're assessing the positives and negatives, because I would like to think all us Spurs fans can agree that Daniel Levy has done some brilliant business for Tottenham, maybe off the pitch especially. But on the pitch, was there times where we should have invested? And I'm sure James is going to pull up more screenshots here of other players. James, if you show. For example, Milan Skriniar. We were heavily linked. I think I think it was Steve Hitchin actually flew out to Milan to try and finalise this deal. All Spurs fans were so excited about this possibility, and I think it was under the Jose Mourinho era where we believed this is a time for us to push on. And then we didn't stump up the cash. We ended up going for a cheaper alternative in Joe Rodon, but we're also linked with Ruben Diaz, who was the other alternative at Benfica. As Fabrizio Romano said, both these players are very interested in coming, but we kind of didn't get the deal done early enough. I can't say all the specifics because, as we know, Ruben Diaz, I'm pretty sure in that same summer, went to Manchester City. But these are examples of these players wanting to come and us just not stumping up the cash. So, James, what do you believe about this particular scenario?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think, like you said about the Joe Rodon cheap option, it's clear to see. As per this Fabrizio Romano tweet, we're talking about Ruben Diaz, as you said, and Skriniar, two world class centre backs, of which now play for top teams, PSG and Man City. And and we ended up with Joe Rodon, who's ended up, I don't even know where he's at now, to be honest, guys.
At Leeds on loan. He's
Leeds on
playing
loan.
well, but as we all know, those signings, Skriniar, James, and Ruben Diaz. Ruben Diaz is probably arguably one of the best centre backs in the world. Skriniar has been a seasoned professional for how long and been one of Inter Milan's best centre halves. And at the time, he was out of favour under Antonio Conte, who obviously we know ended up joining Tottenham. And if we're being honest, Joe Rodon's career hasn't had that same trajectory.
Exactly. I even want to go to this here, Jack. We're talking about 2017, 2018, sort of, well, 2018, 2019, where we had a whole season, January and summer, of making no signings. The only two we made were end of loans. So we made completely no signings. I'm pretty sure that broke a record. And I'm just sat here thinking, wow, really? Because how can a club who in 2018-19, if you remember at the end of the 2019 season, we were in the Champions League final and we made no signings before, you'd ask the question, if we made one or two signings to add to that depth where we had some unbelievable football players under that Poch era, would we have got the Champions League final, or would we have even challenged more in the league? Because we were only a few points off at the end of the day. It's just that's what frustrates me, when we should have backed the team more in the era where we had Poch, because we, look at that Leicester season, even going back a couple more years in 2016. Leicester were better than everyone, but everyone else was awful that season. Arsenal had a terrible season. Really, I know they finished above us in the end, but Man United, Man City, they were off it. It was Leicester's to win. But if we had a couple more in our squad depth in those years, I genuinely believe there was no reason why we couldn't win the Premier League that year. And I think now we're sort of kicking ourselves because we're now trying to build back up to this top four club. So you'd argue that if we would have invested at the right times, we would have still been up there challenging for titles. But, we are where we're at. I'd like to keep it, as positive as possible, but that's what frustrates me.
And James, just to add to your point, like we say, hindsight is a crazy thing. I think everyone in hindsight is a genius. But realistically, at that time, I think we all assessed that Spurs were really building something special under Mauricio Pochettino. And I think for 2 seasons straight, we scored the most goals in the Premier League. We had probably the best defence in the Premier League over 2 years. But when it comes to the crunch and we had injuries out, we didn't invest to kind of build a bigger squad. And I think, James, if you pull up that transfer market, if you've still got it in front of you, I'm pretty sure the season we made the Champions League final, if you look at departures, I think we just got rid of Moussa Dembele, who, as we all know, was Tottenham's shining light. He was the best player probably over the past decade, alongside Harry Kane, Gareth Bale. Where every Spurs player we know in their interviews talks about the quality of Moussa Dembele, talking about him in the calibre of your Yaya Tourés, your Lampards, your Gerrards, like how good he was. I think even Kevin De Bruyne, who played alongside him at Belgium, said, like, Moussa Dembele is that guy. He is the player that everyone is scared to play against. And just before we made that Champions League final, we sold him. And we didn't bring in anyone. We had 18 months, guys, where we didn't bring in a singular player. And we still made the Champions League final. Think about a couple extra players pushing that team. Could it have been a different story? Potentially. But like we said, I think there's a lot of positives which are going to come into, where maybe if we invested, we would have been in sustainability problems. And we have to be sensible with financial income. But it's always important to assess both sides of the situation, where we've gone wrong in the past and potentially where we're going to go right in the future, James.
Yeah, exactly that. And one more, obviously, you mentioned 2019 sort of era, when we literally agreed a fee with Juventus for £64 million, where it would almost suggest that we were spending that year of not spending any money, £64 million, because a very considerable amount, in 2019. And then the deal fell through because of image rights. And we know how that ended. So again, why didn't that go through? Was it because we didn't want to pay a few more million for the image rights? I mean, I don't know the full ins and outs there, but I know that frustrated a lot of the fan base. And we can even go back as far as sort of 2015, I believe, Jack. We might have even been before that, when we were talking about Saido Berahino. That was an absolute mess as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, I thought it was important to bring this one up, just almost as a bit of a funny one, really, because I'm sure everyone remembers Saido Berahino. It was an absolute transfer saga and a half, and Tottenham ended up not getting their man over the line. I think Tony Pulis' West Brom were very stubborn on this signing, and he was flying at the time. He was kind of seen as one big prospect, and Spurs were looking to bolster their attacking options and saw Saido Berahino as their man. As we know, Saido Berahino of never lived up to any sort of expectation, but we didn't kind of spend that extra couple £1 million that we wanted. But then you could also argue Daniel Levy was right, because he never was worth £18 million that they were asking for anyway. But Levy and Tottenham as a club only saw that he was worth 16 million at the time. But I just thought it was in kind of trigger a bit of memory lane for Tottenham Hotspur back in, James, 2015, or I think I was about 10 years old at the time, watching transfer deadline day and hoping Berahino was going to be Tottenham's man. But as we all know, he never was Tottenham's man, but he never was a man of the caliber anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So we talked about 2019 and how we fell short, I guess, in the Champions League final. You made the point about if we kept Moussa Dembele, could it have been a different situation? I guess Moussa Dembele, you could argue, it had his better days then, but I still think he was an absolutely class player.
Yeah.
And I completely agree. He was one of the best we've seen in a Tottenham shirt in certainly my lifetime. But we wanted to sort of move on from that. Obviously, when we got to the Champions League final, it was that same year. We then ended up moving into the new stadium. And Jack, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about Tottenham investing in the new stadium, £1 billion. But obviously, I guess the reason why you're bringing this up is we bought a stadium and there was no good furniture in it. I think even Pochettino was quoted saying something similar after before he was about to leave Tottenham, right?
Yeah, exactly. And Pochettino did say that at the time, and that's ultimately why it never quite worked out. But I also think we're now moving towards the positives in Daniel Levy, and what we're starting to potentially reap the rewards of kind of building for the future. And I think it's hard to argue that Daniel Levy has built a sustainable football club. And this is the reason why we aren't facing any issues. Daniel Levy, when he kind of took over at Spurs, we were kind of a mid-table club. I think it's hard to argue. We were, but believe it or not, ironically, kind of a cup team where we'd go far in the cup competitions, and a lot of teams would be scared to face. But we never really kind of pushed high up the table. But now Daniel Levy's kind of built the infrastructure and obviously the people around him to be a sustainable Champions League football club that is fighting at the higher end of the table. He's paid £1 billion to build this, probably this like state-of-the-art stadium, which we're going to have, James, when we have kids or grandkids, whatever. It's going to be there for the next 100 years, which is obviously unbelievable. We've probably got one of the best training grounds in the world, and that has all been under his tenure at Spurs. So it's hard to argue that he's kind of built a foundation for the future. And maybe in his head, he's thought once we start getting the revenue and reaping the rewards of this amazing stadium that we've built, then he can start investing. But that's why it's always important to look at both sides of the story and how good he has done. But also, as a football fan, as people in the media, you always have a right to criticise as well.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, we wanted to talk finally about sort of, like you said, going forward. Paratici coming in a couple of years ago. Obviously, the sanctions came in for him, but still playing a very vital role in our signings of our players recently, like Christian Romero, Destiny Udogie, Pedro Porro, and even a couple of weeks ago, he was definitely involved in the Dragusin deal. And then going forwards, obviously, Ange. You could argue that with Ange coming in, Jack, do you feel like he's got more of a say in these transfers? Because I feel like Antonio Conte and Jose Mourinho didn't get what they needed to become a successful manager at Tottenham.
I agree. But I also think it's partly because Ange is willing to work with Levy. Ange is very happy to be at Spurs and sees it as a fantastic opportunity. And obviously Levy saw it as a fantastic opportunity to bring Ange in, and they kind of work really well together, and they understand that we might not have the money of a Manchester City, we might not have the money of Liverpool, Arsenal, Real Madrid, but he's willing to invest at the right price and still bring in high caliber players that will fit his system. And with Conte and Mourinho, we know they were very stubborn. You can't sign anyone that isn't fitting in their system. They're not really willing to work with players that they don't like. I would probably say more Conte than Mourinho. But like we said, James, the key word is they're very stubborn. Ange is kind of open to ideas, but at the same time, he's kind of still got the authority to bring in who he likes. The willingness to work together to kind of find someone for the right price as well. So I think Levy's kind of trying to right some wrongs in the past and realise I need to have that collaboration with a manager to be where we want to be. We need to invest, but we don't need to go crazy as well, because at the end of the day, James, running a sustainable football club is so important. We've seen clubs in the past nearly go into liquidation. We've seen with Bury and lots of clubs where if you're spending more money than you earn, you're never going to be able to run a football club for the next 50 to 100 years. And everyone needs a football club. This is why we turn up on the weekends. We go with our family. That's what we talk about. And to kind of lose what you love is like, you don't want to see that to happen to any football club. So from a business point of view, I think he's done a fantastic job. Just on the pitch maybe is where we could have improved. But hopefully, I think he's starting to realise he's got a fantastic dime in Ange Postecoglou, and he is someone that we are very lucky to have. And if he works together with him, we could have future success for a long time, and Ange would be the start of that era.
Yeah, and I think going on the point that he's started to realise he's got a dime in Ange, I think we're seeing that in January. The fact that we've made 2 signings and it's not even halfway through January yet. It'd be interesting to see if we do make 1 or 2 more signings. I know we're now linked with other players, which will come in future videos in the week, but I just think he needs to invest now, because even this season there's a chance, right? Man City aren't up to it. I mean, they're probably still favourites for the title, but they're not the Man City of, 2-3 seasons ago where they were getting 100 points.
I've had a much slower start, exactly.
Arsenal up and down, very up and down, especially last month. Liverpool, not the Liverpool of 2-3 years ago again. And so and Man United are well off it. And then you're looking at Tottenham and, who else, really? I mean,
Aston Villa, maybe. But like you say, James, this is a serious situation for Tottenham. Everyone can see we've got a fantastic starting 11, and we're even starting to show the signs of a brilliant squad as well. We've gone to Old Trafford with 6 players being out injured or at international tournaments, and we've still gone there and dominated possession, and we're unlucky not to win the match, which is ridiculous to say. So maybe this is the start, a signal of intent for this new era, bringing in the likes of Dragusin, who is a highly wanted player, bringing in nice and early Timo Werner, kind of realising that we don't have loads of money to spend on a forward, but we're going to act smartly, a Premier League proven player who I think has had over 200 goals and assists in 300 games. I know some people would say it's not ambitious, but it is smart and it's right. It's only a 6-month loan as well. So we're hoping to see that, learn from your mistakes like we all do in life, and work around what we have in the future and kind of look forward.
Absolutely, spot on. Guys, let us know if you did enjoy that video. A little bit of something different today. Jack, I've enjoyed that one. Guys, let us know in the comments your thoughts on these talking points. As I said at the start of the video, if you could smash a thumbs up, subscribe if you are new, and turn those post notification bells on. We're doing daily uploads. We still haven't missed an upload this year, so we're going to keep it going. And yeah, let us know your thoughts. Jack, super work as always. And guys, remember, come on, you Spurs!
Spurs.